Thank you and welcome to the show this morning. The topic this morning is Pearl High School and segregation in education. And we're fortunate to have with us to talk about Pearl High School and segregation in education, Ms. LWynn, who is a member of the Tennessee Historical Commission. And of course with Ms. Wynn is Ms. Epperson, who is not only an alumni of Pearl High School, but she's also connected with a pharmaceutical organization known as Roche. Is that correct, Ms. Epperson?
Roche Laboratories.
Roche Laboratories, and we believe that we would get that wrong, Ms. Epperson, but nevertheless, I think we're off to a start here. But first of all, Ms. Wynn, let's have you and Ms. Epperson to give us some information about your background and your education and some of the things that were important in your different careers and leading you to where you are today. Let's start with you, Ms. Wynn, and later get the same basic kind of information from Ms. Epperson.
I'm a native Nashvilleian. I graduated from Pearl High School in 1966. I attended and graduated from Tennessee State University. I have degrees in history and also public administration. I am a member of the staff of the Tennessee Historical Commission, where I serve as Assistant Director for State Programs. I'm also an adjunct faculty member at Fisk University.
Very good. And of course, Ms. Epperson?
I'm a 1962 graduate of Pearl High School, and before that my parents and grandparents were graduates of Pearl as well. After graduating in '62, I attended Florida A&M University, where I obtained a Bachelor of Science degree in pharmacy. I left there, worked for Walgreens Drugs in Chicago, Illinois, and after that I initiated a career with Roche Laboratories out of Nutley, New Jersey. And I've been employed by them for 20 years as a pharmaceutical representative, and my responsibilities are calling on physicians, hospitals, and clinics in the Nashville area.
Very good. You know, I think, Ms. Wynn, what we have here dealing with Pearl High School and segregation in education, the belief on the part of many people that such institutions as Pearl High School and some of the other high schools stretched throughout the southern parts of the United States especially, were entities that were somehow separated from everything else. And what we'd like to do today is to have you to talk about Pearl High School within the framework of segregation in education during the time. And let's talk about it from that perspective, and then have Ms. Epperson to give us some information about Pearl itself. Let's talk about Pearl High School and segregation in education.
Okay, let's go back to the beginning of what I call Pearl School. Pearl actually began in 1883 as an elementary school. It was located on Fifth Avenue, what is now Fifth Avenue South. Then it was Old South Sumner Street. It was located in a brand new two-story brick building, and it was named for Joshua Pearl, the first superintendent of Nashville public schools. It became a high school during the academic year of 1897-98, which is a year to 2 years after Plessy versus Ferguson, which was the Supreme Court case that sanctioned separate but equal, or as I like to say, separate and unequal. It was, Pearl started out as a school for blacks within that context. Even prior to it becoming a high school in 1883, it was a segregated institution. When we look at the legalization of the codification of the Jim Crow laws, Pearl did not exist in a vacuum. It is not the first high school in Nashville. Meigs was the first high school in Nashville, which started, Meigs High School started shortly after 1883, when it was founded also as an elementary school. It's an interesting story how high school education for African Americans in Nashville came about. Miss Sandy Porter wanted her son to obtain a high school education. During that time period, when blacks finished the 8th grade, their education was virtually over. But she wanted her son to obtain a high school education, and she tried to enroll him in what was called Fogg School at the time. That was around 1886. Now, it's interesting because the city council, through the leadership of James Napier, had established a resolution to give blacks a high school education in 1884. But they did not act on that resolution until after the African American community began to assert its willingness to obtain an education for their children. So subsequently after that, in September of 1886, Superintendent Caldwell reported that blacks could obtain an education, and that could be handled through the founding of or extending the education at Meigs. During that time, Meigs had the 9th and 10th grades, and when they initiated the high school, they added the 11th grade. Pearl, throughout its history, within the confines of segregation, has been an illustrious school. It's been one of the leaders on the educational landscape, not only in Nashville, but also throughout the nation. The late former J.C. Hull said it was one of the first comprehensive high schools in Nashville, and it certainly competed nationally. It was within the realms of such schools as Dunbar in Washington. It was recognized nationally. It had a very dedicated faculty. The students that came out are represented in many various fields: ministry, music, religion, law, business, education, you name it. The graduates of Pearl High School are there.
Well, I would imagine, Ms. Epperson, it would be safe to say that, in a real sense, Pearl might have represented about the closest thing in Nashville that African Americans had in terms of having access to an education that was beyond the elementary education during that time. Would that be a safe assessment in terms of the influence that it would have?
Yes.
Now, what about your Pearl High School experiences, Ms. Epperson? Certainly, we don't go back to the 1890s, but in terms of just, but in terms of just being an alumni of Pearl High School, what are your experiences?
Well, I think Ms. Wynn will agree that the school was the nucleus of a threefold organization within the community. You had the church, the home, and the school. Attending the school was also representative of seeing the same people in church and in the neighborhoods as well. So it was a family-oriented thing. You were encouraged to do your very best, and if you didn't, you know, somebody knew. I remember entering the school, and Mr. Hull, J.C. Hull, was standing in the foyer, and I knew I was grown. You know, I passed by, and he said, "Young lady, are you a Dederick?" And I stopped. I said, "Yes." "How do you know?" He said, "I know your whole family. Be careful." It was that kind of atmosphere. You know, you were respectful of your peers, of the instructors there. They did everything they could to encourage you to pursue whatever area you were interested in. The science department was very strong. So was the history department, the English department. The whole school was very strong.
Now, when you talk in terms of people who graduated from Pearl over the many, many years, who are some of the folks that you can talk about who have made contributions to American society, or whatever, however you wish to evaluate that? Some of the, I guess we're looking for some of the important Pearl alumnus during the period.
I can think of several from my era, I would say. We have a minister from our class. Let me see if I can get it all right. Lois Ann Pogue is her maiden name. Lois Ann Pogue received a doctorate degree in communication and in the ministry in the same year from Howard University. She was the first female delegate for her convention. It was held in Florida several years ago, and she is the pastor of her own church in the Chicago area. We also have a semi-pro golfer who makes many of the circuits, and I can't think of his name offhand. I don't think it's important necessarily that we have people who were in the spotlight as it is that people...
Let me interrupt you here, Ms. Epperson, as we take our first commercial break, and we'll be back with you following this commercial break. Yep. Segregation in education.